John Gray had never seen a place like this before. The sky above was a strange shade of green, and the ground beneath his boots felt like it was alive, breathing beneath him. The landscape around him was unlike anything he had ever imagined on Earth. He was alone, stranded on a strange world far from home. He had no idea how he got there. His mission had been simple: travel to a new world and make contact with the species there. But something had gone horribly wrong, and now he was on a planet that was far from friendly. The strange thing was, he wasn't the only one who had arrived. The moment he stepped out of his ship, he was met by a group of alien soldier Zernak warriors. Their eyes glowed with a cold, unnatural light. They stared at him, sizing him up, unsure of what to make of the human who had just appeared in front of them. Then, out of the shadows, stepped a figure who caught his attention. She was tall, her armor shining in the faint light of the planets. Twin moons. She had the look of a warrior, eyes sharp, stance confident. But there was something else about her, something that seemed different from the others. Her presence alone made John feel small and vulnerable. "Just human," she said with a voice that was both harsh and curious. She spoke in a language he didn't understand, but the words were clear enough to him. It was a phrase filled with something ancient, something John couldn't quite place. He could feel the weight of her gaze as she studied him, trying to decide whether he was a threat or not. Her hand gripped the spear tightly, her knuckles white. The weapon was long and sharp, gleaming in the light as she held it ready. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. John stood frozen, not sure what to do. His instincts told him to speak, to explain himself, but he didn't know how to approach the situation. He had never been trained for moments like this. His heart raced in his chest as he looked at the warrior woman, unsure whether she would attack or listen. "Who are you?" John finally managed to say, his voice cracking slightly. He swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. He had to be calm. Had to stay in control. The last thing he needed was to make this worse. The woman's eyes narrowed. She seemed to sense the fear in his voice, but she didn't lower her spear. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her gaze becoming even more intense. "You're just human," she repeated, her tone softer now, but still filled with a mix of distrust and wariness. "Exactly what we feared." John blinked, confused. What did she mean by that? What had they feared about humans? He opened his mouth to ask, but before he could speak, the woman raised her hand, signaling the others to step back. They did so reluctantly, still keeping a close eye on him. "I am Naira," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I am captain of the Zarnak army, and you are trespassing on our world." "Right." John nodded slowly. "I didn't mean to trespass," he said, trying his best to keep his voice steady. "I was just looking for answers. My ship crashed and I need help." The Zarnak soldiers behind Niera exchanged uncertain glances, but she didn't take her eyes off John. There was a long pause before she spoke again. "You don't understand," she said, almost to herself. "You humans, ... you are a threat? You always have been." John's heart skipped a beat. "A threat? I'm just here for peace," he said quickly. "I'm not a threat to anyone." Naira stepped closer, her spear still in hand. "That's what we all thought," she said, her voice quiet but filled. "With a heavy weight, the galaxy feared you once. And now you've come. I will not let you destroy everything we've worked for." John was taken aback. "Destroy? I don't even know where I am." Niera's grip on the spear tightened, her face hardening. "You don't know what you're dealing with," she said, the words dripping with bitterness. "Humans may seem small, but you are dangerous in ways the galaxy cannot understand. You could undo everything. You could be the end of us all." John felt his chest tighten. The words stung, but he could see that Niera wasn't lying. There was fear in her eyes, a deep-seated fear that went beyond simple hatred. She wasn't afraid of his physical presence. She was afraid of what humanity might represent.
"Please,"
John said, trying to stay calm. "I don't know what you've heard about humans, but we're not what you think. We can help. I just need to understand what's going on here." Ira shook her head slowly, her gaze never leaving his. "You may be just human, but you are part of something much bigger. And that's what scares us." As the tension in the air thickened, John realized that this was no ordinary first contact. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It was a matter of survival for both sides. The Zarnok weren't just afraid of humans. They feared the power that humanity might unleash. And at that moment, John knew his journey on this strange world had just begun. He wasn't sure what he was walking into. But he knew one thing for certain. He had to find a way to prove that humanity wasn't the enemy. John stood in silence, his mind racing. Niera's words had left him unsettled. The weight of her gaze felt like it was pressing down on him. The Zarnok feared humanity. But why? What had humans done to earn such a reputation across the galaxy? Was it really just because of their power? Or was there something more? Niera stepped back, but she kept her spear in hand, her sharp eyes watching him closely. The Zarnok soldiers behind her were still on edge, but none made a move. John felt the tension in the air, thick and almost suffocating. "I don't understand," John said, his voice trembling slightly. "We've only just begun exploring space. We're not a threat to anyone." Niera studied him carefully before. Speaking, her voice was low, almost as if she was speaking to herself. "You don't know what you're dealing with, human. Prophecy warned us about you. For centuries, we've feared the day you would arrive, and now it's come true." John frowned. "Prophecy? What prophecy?" Niera's expression darkened. She lowered her spear, but it remained in her grip. "Long ago, before our time, the Ancient Ones left a warning. They said that when humanity finally reached the stars, it would bring about the end of the old order. You are a change, a force we cannot control." John was confused. A force of change? "I don't understand. What makes humans so dangerous to you?" Niera paused, her gaze shifting to the horizon, as if searching for the right words. "The Ancient Ones feared the power you possess, the power to unite or destroy. You have the potential to bring about peace, but it comes with a cost. In your nature, humans have a gift, and it's a gift that the galaxy has never seen before. You can bend others to your will, create alliances out of nothing, or tear entire civilizations apart." John's heart pounded. "That's not true. We're not like that. We've made mistakes, yes, but we've always tried to help, to build, not to destroy." Niera's eyes flashed with something fierce. "You say that, but you don't know what you've awakened. Humanity is a force that can break everything: structures, alliances, even the balance of life itself. You've unlocked something ancient, something we've never understood, and that is why we fear you." John stepped forward, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "I'm not here to cause harm. I'm just lost. My ship crashed, and I need help. Please, let me prove that humanity isn't the enemy. I don't know what this prophecy is, but I can't be the cause of the end." Nahara's grip on her spear loosened, but she didn't lower it completely. "I want to believe you, human," she said, her voice softening, "but we cannot ignore the warning. The galaxy has been at peace for so long. We cannot risk it all on one human's promise." John's mind raced. He had to find a way to prove to Niera and to the Zarnak that humanity wasn't the threat. They believed he couldn't allow them to make their decisions based on ancient fears. There had to be another way. He had to find it. Before he could speak again, a loud noise broke the silence. It was the sound of something large moving through. The airship, maybe? John turned toward the noise, his heart pounding in his chest. He hadn't expected any ships to be nearby, let alone one that could make such a sound. Niera's eyes snapped to the sky, her hand quickly returning to her spear. "We're not alone," she whispered, her tone now hard and alert. She raised her arm and signaled to her soldiers. "Get ready." The soldiers quickly moved into position, and John instinctively stepped back, unsure of what was happening. Was this a threat? Were they going to attack him? The fear that had been building in his chest started to grow again, but this time. It wasn't just fear for himself. It was fear for the entire galaxy. Was he really the cause of all this fear? Was humanity truly a force of destruction, as Niera had said? The ship appeared in the distance, growing larger with every passing second. It was unlike anything John had ever seen. The design was sleek, metallic, and shining with an eerie glow. It wasn't a Zarnok ship. And it wasn't a Tharkle ship either. So it was something else, something foreign, something dangerous. Nyara motioned for her soldiers to stay hidden behind rocks and trees, their eyes trained on the incoming vessel. She looked back at John, her face set in determination. "You're not safe here," she said quickly. "You need to come with me." John hesitated. He wanted to ask more questions, wanted to understand what was happening. But before he could say anything, Nyara grabbed his arm and pulled him behind a large boulder. The sound of the ship's engines grew louder as it descended, its dark form casting a shadow over the ground. John's heart raced, and he realized that whatever was coming, it was coming fast. As the ship landed, a figure stepped out, tall and imposing. It was another alien. This one was unlike any John had ever seen. It looked like a mixture of different species, its body covered in dark swirling patterns. Its eyes were cold and calculating, staring straight at Nyara. "This is not the human you feared," Nyara said in a low voice. "This is something worse." John's mind swirled with confusion. What was happening? Was this the enemy Nyara had spoken of? Were they going to attack him now? The figure stepped closer, and John's pulse quickened. Whatever was happening, whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was only just beginning. John stood behind Nyara, his heart pounding as he watched the mysterious figure approach. The alien was tall, its body sleek and smooth, adorned with swirling patterns that glowed faintly, its eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Nyara with a look that sent a chill down John's spine. "Captain Nyara," the alien spoke, its voice deep and resonant, as if it carried the weight of 1,000 years. "You've betrayed your people. You've allowed this ... human to live." It's John's breath caught in his throat. Betrayed Nyara? What was happening? Nyara stepped forward, her spear raised slightly, though it wasn't aimed at the newcomer. She held it as if it was a shield, a symbol of her authority. "I have not betrayed my people. I've sought to protect them." The alien's lips curled into a small, almost mocking smile. "Protect them. You speak of protection, but you have welcomed the very thing we have been warned against. You believe this human is not a threat, but you have no idea what you've awakened." John felt a wave of unease wash over him. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice rising slightly. "Not a weapon. I don't even know what's going on here." The alien turned its gaze to John, its eyes narrowing. "You humans are far more dangerous than you realize," it said coldly. "You don't understand the power you possess. Your very existence threatens the balance we've fought so hard to maintain." Nyara's eyes flickered with a hint of doubt, but she quickly regained her composure. "You may be right about humanity's potential," she said firmly, "but John is not a threat. Is lost, just like the rest of us. We have to work together. The galaxy is at war, and only by uniting can we hope to survive." The alien's expression hardened, and it took a step closer, its gaze never leaving Nyara's face. "You speak of unity, but how can we trust the humans? How can we trust that they will not bring about our destruction?" Nyara stepped between the alien and John, her posture defensive. "Because I believe in the truth. I've seen humanity's capacity for peace. It's in their nature. They are not the monsters you think they are." John looked at Nyara, feeling a mixture of gratitude and confusion. He had never expected anyone to defend him, especially not an alien warrior like Nyara. He wasn't sure what she saw in him, but he knew he couldn't let her down. He had to prove that humanity wasn't the threat the galaxy feared. The alien sneered. "You are naive, Captain. The humans may not have meant to destroy us, but they will. Their power is unpredictable. It is only a matter of time before they turn on us." Nyara's grip tightened on her spear. "I'm not giving up on peace, and I'm not giving up on humanity." The tension in the air grew thicker, and John could sense the danger in every word. It was clear that this alien, whatever it was, wasn't going to back down easily. Nyara was fighting not just for her own beliefs, but for John's survival. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. "I will not let you bring war to our doorstep." "Captain," the alien said, its voice rising with anger, "if you continue to protect this human, I will have no choice but to act." John felt a shiver run down his spine. He had no idea what this alien was capable of, but Nyara wasn't backing down. She was standing tall, her eyes locked on the alien with unyielding determination. "Then you will have to go through me," Nyara said, her voice cold and firm. For a moment, the two stood facing each other in silence, the air crackling with tension. The alien stared at Nyara, as if calculating whether it could defeat her in a fight. Finally, it spoke again, its voice softening. "You've made your choice," it said. "But mark my words, Captain, this will not end well. You may think you can control the human, but the truth is, he's already begun the destruction. Balance has been shattered." With those final words, the alien turned and walked away, its form fading into the shadows. Nyara didn't lower her spear, her eyes still focused on where the alien had been. After a long moment, she finally turned to John, her face hard, yet there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. John swallowed hard. What was that about? Who was that? Nyara didn't answer right away. She seemed lost in thought, her gaze distant. Finally, she spoke. "That was Corin. He's one of the most powerful members of the Zarnok Council, and he represents everything we fear. His people believe that the arrival of humanity will bring an end to everything, our way of life, our existence. They think that we, the Zarnok, are the last hope for peace in the galaxy." John shook his head in disbelief. "So that's what this is all about? Fear? But I'm not here to destroy anything. I just want to help. I just want to get back to my..." People Nyara studied him for a long time before replying. "I believe you, John, but the others do not. They see your kind as a threat in Corin. Corin will stop at nothing to destroy you. He will try to convince the council to hunt you down. You don't have much time." John felt a wave of panic rising in his chest. What do we do? How do we stop him? Nyara looked at him, her eyes serious. "We have to convince the council to hear the truth. We have to show them that humanity is not the enemy. If we fail, ... If we fail, the war will be upon us. And we will all lose." John nodded, his mind racing. There was so much at stake. The galaxy was on the brink of war, and he had no idea how to stop it. But one thing was clear. He couldn't do this alone. He needed Nyara's help, and she needed his. The alliance between them had been fractured by fear, but it could still be repaired. They had to fight together against the fear, against the prophecy, and against the dark forces that sought to tear them apart. As the two of them stood in silence, the weight of what lay ahead settled over them both. The battle for the future of the galaxy was just beginning. The silence that followed Corin's departure was heavy, almost suffocating. John and Nyara stood side by side, their minds racing with the same thought: time was running out. "I didn't expect that," John said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Nyara didn't respond immediately. She kept her eyes fixed on the spot where the alien had vanished into the darkness. Her fingers tightened around her spear, her knuckles white. It was clear she was deep in thought, processing what had just happened. "What do we do now?" John asked again, his tone more urgent this time. He could feel the tension in the air, like the calm before a storm. Nyara finally spoke, her voice low and serious. "We need to move quickly. Corin has already gone back to the council, and he will do everything in his power to convince them that humanity is the enemy. If they agree with him, they will send their armies after you. And once that happens, it will be too late." John's heart sank. He hadn't expected this to escalate so quickly. All he wanted was to find a way back to his ship and continue his mission. But now, his presence on this alien world was causing more problems than he could ever have imagined. A war, a prophecy, and a threat to the galaxy's peace. None of this had been his doing, but he couldn't escape it now. "We need to warn the others," Nyara continued, her voice steady, but filled with a growing sense of urgency. "There's a faction of the Zarnok that still believes in peace. They're the ones who will listen to us. If we can get to them before Corin can sway the council, we might have a chance." John nodded. "Let's do it." The two of them began. Moving swiftly, Nyara leading the way with her spear at the ready. John followed closely behind, his mind still spinning with everything that had happened. He couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would the Zarnok Council listen to reason? Or was the galaxy already too far gone, consumed by fear and ancient prophecies? As they made their way through the dense forest, Niera's sharp eyes scanned their surroundings. The Zarnok warriors were known for their incredible senses, and she was no exception. She moved silently, her footsteps barely making a sound as she navigated the terrain. John did his best to keep up, but the alien landscape was unfamiliar to him, and he stumbled a few times trying to match her pace. "We're close," Niera said after a few minutes, her voice barely above a whisper. John didn't say anything. He was focused on the task at hand, determined to do whatever it took to stop the war from happening. He wasn't sure what he could do, but he had to try. The stakes were too high to fail. Suddenly they stopped. Niera's eyes narrowed as she crouched down, signaling for John to do the same. He followed her lead, his heart racing in his chest. Ahead of them, they saw a group of Zarnok soldiers. They were standing guard around a large stone structure, one that John recognized as the location where the Zarnok Council met. Niera tensed, her grip on her spear tightening. These soldiers weren't part of the peace faction. They were loyal to Corin, and they would do anything to stop Niera from reaching the council. "We have to be careful," Niera whispered. "If they see us, we're done for." John nodded, his mind racing with ideas. They couldn't fight their way through, not with so many soldiers and no backup. They needed to be stealthy, to get in and out without being noticed. Nayar glanced at him, her expression serious. "Follow my lead." She moved quickly and silently, using the shadows to her advantage. John followed, doing his best to stay out of sight. They crept closer to the stone structure, the sound of the Zarnok soldiers' voices growing louder with each step. Just as they were about to slip past the soldiers, Niera stopped. She held up a hand, signaling for John to stop as well. From the shadows, they watched as a Zarnok soldier approached the group with a message in hand. The soldier was carrying a large, sealed scroll, which he handed over to the leader of the group. Niera's eyes widened as she watched. "That's it," she whispered. "They've made their decision. Corin has already convinced the council." John's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means," Niera said, her voice filled with frustration, "that the Zarnok are already preparing for war. They've already made their choice, and now they're going to attack us." John's mind raced as he tried to piece everything together. Corin had already convinced the council, and now they were planning an attack. They were running out of time. "We need to stop them," he said, determination in his voice. "We have to get to the council before they can launch their attack." Looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and doubt. "You don't understand, it's too late. Once the council makes its decision, it's final. The war will start, and there's nothing we can do to stop it." "No," John said firmly. "There has to be a way. I'm not giving up on this. Won't let humanity be the cause of a galaxy-wide war." Jarrah studied him for a long moment, as if deciding whether or not to believe him. Finally, she nodded. "All right, we'll try one last time, but we have to move quickly." With that, the two of them slipped into the stone structure, ready to face whatever came next. If fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and they couldn't afford to fail. The stone walls of the Zarnak Council chamber felt cold as John and Niera stepped inside. The air was thick with tension, the heavy scent of incense and metal filling the space. Zarnak Council members were gathered at a long table, their sharp eyes scanning the room as they discussed matters of war. The room was dimly lit, with only a few flickering lights casting shadows on the stone walls. Niera's steps were quiet as she led John through the chamber, her grip still tight on her spear. John followed closely behind, his mind racing with the weight of their mission. They had to convince the council to stop the war before it started. If they failed, the galaxy would be plunged into chaos. As they reached the center of the room, Niera stepped forward and raised her hand, signaling for silence. The council members turned their attention toward her, their eyes filled with suspicion and hostility. "What is this?" demanded Corin, the leader of the council, his voice filled with scorn. "You bring a human into our sacred hall?" Niera stood tall, her voice steady but filled with determination. "I bring him here because we have no choice. The galaxy is on the brink of war, and humanity is not the enemy. We must listen to the truth, or we will all be destroyed." Corin sneered. "The truth? You speak of truth, but all I see is a human who threatens our very existence. The prophecy has been clear. The humans will destroy us all. John stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. I'm not here to destroy anyone. I just want to survive and go back to my people. The prophecy doesn't speak of destruction, it speaks of change. We have the power to bring peace, but we have to work together. The council members exchanged skeptical looks, their eyes narrowing. Corin's face twisted with anger. You speak of peace, but you don't understand the power you wield. Humanity has always been a force of chaos. You can't control it, and neither can we. Your very presence is a threat to our survival. Niara's expression hardened, her grip on her spear tightening once again. You are wrong, Corin. Humanity is not a threat. You've been blinded by fear, and now it's time to open your eyes. Of the council members, an older Zarnok, with silver markings on his face, spoke up. There's no room for discussion, Captain Niara. Corin is right. The prophecy has warned us for centuries. Humanity is not a friend to the Zarnok, or to anyone else. John felt his chest tighten. They were so close, yet so far. The council had already made their decision, and Corin's influence was too strong. But he couldn't give up. He couldn't let the galaxy descend into war over fear and misunderstanding. You're wrong, John said, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. I've seen what humanity is capable of. We can unite. We can bring peace. Only if we stop fighting each other. Niara nodded in agreement, her eyes locked on the council. You fear the unknown, but you cannot judge an entire species by its potential for destruction. We are capable of so much more. We have the power to heal, not just to fight. The silence in the room was deafening as the council members exchanged glances. Corin was the first to speak, his voice dripping with disdain. You are a fool, Captain. You have sealed your fate by protecting this human. You've already chosen your side, and now you will pay the price. Niara's jaw tightened. You don't understand, Corin. Humanity's power is not about destruction. It's about uniting the galaxy. You're so focused on the fear of what could happen that you've forgotten the possibilities. John stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Corin. There's a weapon on this planet, a weapon that could change everything. It was created by the ancients, the ones who saw the future of humanity. It's not a weapon of war, it's a weapon of unity. The room fell silent once again, the weight of John's words hanging in the air. Corin's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What are you talking about? Ancient weapon, John continued, his voice steady. It was designed to bring all species together, to create harmony and peace. But it was hidden, locked away because the galaxy feared it. Humanity was meant to find it, to unlock its power. But we need your help to do that. The council members exchanged uncertain glances, their eyes filled with doubt. Corin looked at Niara, his expression one of disbelief. You believe this human? You think he holds the key to our survival? Niara nodded slowly. I do. I've seen the power of humanity, and I believe it can change the galaxy. We have to work together. Corin stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. You've made a grave mistake, Captain. If you continue to protect this human, you will bring the wrath of the entire galaxy upon us. Niara's eyes flashed with defiance. I'd rather face the wrath of the galaxy than stand by and watch it destroy itself. Corin's expression twisted with rage, but before he could say anything more, another voice interrupted. We've listened to both sides, said the older council member with the silver markings. His voice was calm but filled with authority. Perhaps it is time to consider another path. If this weapon truly exists, we must investigate it. We cannot allow fear to guide our decisions any longer. The room fell into silence again, but this time it wasn't filled with anger. It was filled with uncertainty. John felt a spark of hope. They weren't lost yet. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make peace. We have to find the weapon, John said, his voice filled with conviction. Together, the galaxy needs us to unite, not to fight. Corin's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak. Council members exchanged glances, and for the first time, they seemed to hesitate. Niara turned to John, her eyes filled with determination. We still have a chance, John, but we need to move quickly. Corin will try to stop us, but we can't let him. John nodded. We won't stop until we've proven that humanity isn't the enemy. As they prepared to leave the council chamber, John couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The path ahead was uncertain, and the dangers were real. But with Niera's help, maybe they could change the course of the galaxy. The sun had barely risen when John and Niera set out on their mission. The Zarnok Council had agreed, though reluctantly, to consider the truth of humanity's potential for peace. But time was running out. Korn's forces were already mobilizing, preparing for an attack. The weapon, the one that could bring unity to the galaxy, was still hidden, and they had no idea where to find it. Niera led the way, her steps steady and sure, her sharp eyes scanning the terrain. John walked beside her, still trying to wrap his mind around everything that had happened in the past few days. A prophecy, a weapon, a galaxy on the brink of war, none of it made sense. But one thing was clear. If they didn't find this weapon and unlock its power, the galaxy would be lost. We're close, Niera said, her voice low but filled with determination. John nodded, his heart racing. They had come so far, but they still had no idea what they were walking into. The ancient weapon could change everything, but it could also destroy them if it fell into the wrong hands. The forest around them grew thicker as they moved deeper into the mountains. The path was treacherous, the ground uneven and filled with rocks and debris. But Niera moved with ease, her experience as a warrior giving her an edge in navigating the difficult terrain. John did his best to keep up, his boots slipping occasionally. As he tried to match her pace, after what felt like hours, they reached the base of a towering cliff. At the top, a large stone structure stood, its surface covered in strange symbols that John didn't recognize. The air was thick with an eerie stillness. The only sound was the rustling of the wind through the trees. "This is it, Niera," said her voice almost a whisper. John's eyes widened as he looked up at the structure. It was ancient, its design unlike anything he had ever seen. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with an energy he couldn't explain, as if the building itself was alive, waiting for something or someone to awaken it. "How do we get inside?" John asked, his voice filled with awe. Niera stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch one of the symbols. As her fingers brushed against it, the stone seemed to shimmer, and the air around them hummed with a low vibration. John stepped back, startled by the sudden change. "I've seen this before," Niera said, her eyes narrowed as she studied the symbol. "This is the seal that protects the weapon. It will only open to those who are chosen. And we're not the only ones who know about it." John's heart sank. "Korn's forces will be here soon, won't they?" Niera nodded. "Yes. We don't have much time. We need to unlock the weapon before they arrive. If we don't, it could fall into the wrong hands, and the consequences will be devastating." John looked up at the structure again, his mind racing. The weapon could change everything, but what if they couldn't control it? What if it was too powerful? What if we can't control it? John asked, voicing his fear aloud. Niera turned to face him, her expression serious. "If we don't try, we will lose everything. Can't let fear dictate our actions. We have to trust in humanity's ability to unite, to bring peace. We have to believe in that." John nodded slowly, his fear giving way to a new sense of determination. He had come this far, and he couldn't turn back now. The galaxy was on the brink of destruction. It was up to Himande Nayar to stop it. Together, they approached the entrance to the stone structure. Nayar raised her hand, and the symbols on the wall seemed to shift and change, revealing a hidden doorway. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dark, narrow passageway beyond. "This is it," Niera said, her voice filled with a mix of hope and fear. John followed her inside, the air growing colder as they descended into the darkness. The walls were lined with strange markings, and the faint glow of energy pulsed from deep within the structure. The deeper they went, the more intense the energy became. It felt almost alive, like the entire place was waiting for something. Finally, they reached the heart of the structure. At the center of the room, a large pedestal stood, its surface covered in ancient runes. On top of the pedestal lay a small, glowing object and orb, no larger than a human fist. It was surrounded by a soft golden light that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "This is it," Niera whispered, her voice filled with reverence. John stepped forward cautiously, his eyes fixed on the orb. The energy emanating from it was overwhelming, and he could feel the power within it. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. This was the weapon, the key to peace or to destruction. Niera reached out, her fingers brushing against the orb. The moment she touched it, the room was filled with a blinding light. John shielded his eyes, the intensity of the glow overwhelming. He felt a rush of energy surge through the air, and for a moment he thought he might lose consciousness. When the light finally faded, John opened his eyes. The orb was no longer glowing, but the energy in the room still hummed, powerful and alive. Niera turned to him, her expression filled with awe. "It's done. The weapon has been unlocked." John stepped forward, his heart racing. "What now? What do we do with it?" Niera looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "Now, we show the galaxy that humanity is not a threat. We show them that we can unite, that we can bring peace." But as they stood there, the ground beneath them shook. The rumble of approaching ships echoed in the distance. Corrin's forces were closing in. "We don't have much time," Niera said, urgency in her voice. "We need to leave, now." John nodded, his mind still spinning with the enormity of what they had just uncovered. The galaxy's fate rested in their hands. They had unlocked the weapon, but would they be able to use it before war tore everything apart? Together they turned toward the exit, the weight of the galaxy's future on their shoulders.